Welcome to Unit 4 of the Drawdown Roadmap video series. In this unit, we're going to talk about how we could use the Drawdown Roadmap to make the most effective climate actions in the future. Well, one of the ways we could take effective climate action is by guiding better investments. That's like deploying money and capital and other resources in the best possible way to take advantage of climate solutions into the future. But before we do that, we always have to step back and recognize, how do people invest today anyway? Well, when I think about investing, I tend to think of a three-legged stool. One of the legs of the stool, of course, is just people's core values. These are human decisions. People invest money in things they believe in or they want to see in the world, or things that they understand and can kind of wrap their head around. And it's important to recognize that. There's also, of course, financial goals to investing. Some people want to make money off their investments naturally. Other folks, maybe philanthropists or impact investors, want to see a social and environmental return on their money as well as a financial return. So we need to think about the kind of goals that are seen here as well as the values. But finally, what the Drawdown Roadmap can add is some scientific reality. So based on what the values and financial goals are for particular investments, we can add a dose of reality to say, here's what you actually need to do to get the outcome you're hoping for. And so we're going to focus on that reality check right now. So when it comes to investing, maybe one group we could talk about is philanthropists. This could be private individuals, family foundations, big brick and mortar foundations, you name it. People who donate money for particular causes, maybe on climate change. Well, one of the questions we get a lot is, where are the gaps in climate funding today, and where can philanthropists help out? Well, we can answer that question thanks to the Drawdown Roadmap, because the roadmap shows us in detail what the ideal portfolio of climate action should look like above, and we can compare that to estimates of where philanthropic money is going below. On the second bar, we show data from ClimateWorks, another nonprofit that's been analyzing patterns of climate philanthropy over the last couple of years. And when we break down that funding and look at the part that seems to be going directly into solutions, not other areas of climate work, but the solutions part, we see that things like electricity and maybe food and agriculture and transportation are pretty well funded. But some areas like industrial sources of climate change emissions, or the other emissions like fugitive and flaring methane or processing of crude oil, things like that, are maybe underrepresented. Also, it's not really clear in different foundations' reports how much is given to social interventions that have a proven link to reducing emissions later on. There's a lot of funding for social justice in the climate world, but how much of that is directly tied to evidence-based work that also lowers emissions later on? That's an area where more investment could be needed as well. Well, another area we've worked on is with private investors. This could be individuals who invest their money in different areas for, financial return, but also want to see some kind of climate impact as well. Or it could be venture capitalists who want to start new technologies and companies, impact investors that want to see financial and social benefits, or maybe a sovereign wealth fund that wants to do something on climate change with their money too. A whole range of different investors. But one of the things we get asked a lot from all these folks is, hey, what investments could make the biggest difference on climate change here today? Well, again, the roadmap can help answer that. For example, looking at the spectrum of activities we need to do over time, we can see these so-called emergency brake solutions here that have the biggest impact early on. So often we guide investors who want to see early impacts of climate change from their investing to look at things like reducing deforestation, cutting methane and black carbon emissions, or focusing on the efficiency of energy and food in today's systems, because these are the things that can help bend the curve now with early money. Well, another place we can help guide climate action with the Drawdown Roadmap is in the world of business. And a lot of businesses are concerned about climate, and some are asking us the question like, hey, how do I know I'm having a real impact and avoid the issues of kind of greenwashing, kind of looking like we're doing something, but maybe we're not? So how do we focus on work there? Well, one of the questions in business is there's kind of an over-reliance on what's called being a net zero company and using carbon offsets to do that. It's really easy for a company to say, yes, we're going to be net zero as a company, and then not really do anything within the company. Instead, just spend some money on buying not very credible sometimes offsets That is putting money into projects somewhere in the world where you get a carbon credit in return for a little bit of cash. Well, who knows? Sometimes these offsets are excellent, sometimes they're not, and it's a whole kind of wild west of activities out there. Also, the idea of being net zero as a company is really problematic. Net zero was never intended to be applied to a company or some individual group. It only makes sense when it's the entire planet. That's what scientists used it for in the first place. Instead of being net zero, we would talk about going towards real zero. Let's focus on what companies can do themselves to reduce emissions, because the Drawdown Roadmap tells us that cutting emissions directly is the most important action of all. So we work with companies and tell them you should cut your own emissions as much as possible, knowing you're not going to get to zero right away. It may take a long time and maybe never get there completely. But do everything you can and track progress and be transparent about how you're cutting your own emissions and where the challenges are and maybe where you fell short. That's okay, but keep it clear and do the real work. If you want to do more, you can always donate money to other groups around the world that are cutting emissions. But instead of calling that an offset of your carbon, just call it a donation. Say it's something you're doing to make the world better and help the rest of the world address climate change too. It's a lot more transparent and a lot more direct, and it's a lot less of the so-called greenwashing. Just gets the work done. The Drawdown Roadmap can also be used to guide government action. In fact, we're in discussions with folks at the White House asking how can they deploy public money in the best possible way to address climate change. Well, again, the Drawdown Roadmap shows us a little bit of how to do that. Here again is that ideal portfolio of where climate dollars should go in these different areas. And here's an example of government funding for climate work, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022. The Inflation Reduction Act is going to spend about $36 billion a year over the next decade. And primarily, this act is going to focus on electricity and buildings and industry and transportation. It's doing a little less than we'd like maybe in food and agriculture and a few other areas, but that's where maybe future legislation and future government actions can round out the difference and add to the success of the Inflation Reduction Act. This is a great head start, and future work can build upon this and finish off what's needed next. But overall, the Drawdown Roadmap shows us how science can guide really effective climate action around the world, whether it's in investing or in communities, in businesses, in governments, all around the world. By listening to the science and how science informs action, we can take the best steps to stop climate change. What's really kind of amazing about all this is we live in the most incredible moment in human history. Because as we face the climate crisis, we know we have to reimagine everything, redo everything we've ever done before and change it in incredibly fundamental ways. But when I look at this, I don't think I just have to reimagine everything. I see that we get to, because we live in a world that's kind of broken in so many different ways. We're doing things based on 19th century technologies and political institutions with incredible inequities and unsustainable ways of powering our economy. What we can do is reimagine all of it and build an incredible new world. And I believe this extraordinary world is not only possible, it's within reach. Just imagine, within a generation of right now, we could live in a world that's not only sustainable and averting climate change and other environmental disasters, but it's a world where we could help eradicate poverty, eradicate illiteracy, and improve human health, equality, and justice all across the world. So here's my ask of you. Let's go out and all build a vision of a better world. What does that better world look like to you? What world do you want? Do you dream of and do you aspire for, not only for yourself, but for future generations? And let's all go out and share that vision of a better world with everyone. Because I'm convinced that by collaborating and sharing these visions of a better world, we can make those dreams a reality and turn this into a world we can be proud of. Because I assure you, it is not game over on climate change or any of these other issues. It's game on. It's the moment we step up and seize the moment and make the most of it. Because this moment is the moment we get to make our choice and make our stand. And this is the moment we can be proud of.